So, they always say communication is key. Some people now say not communication, but comprehension. I say all of it, all right? Communication, comprehension, one way or another, you have to have these fundamental things in any relationship if you want it to succeed. But one of the problems that a lot of women come across is dealing with a man, whether through dating, marriage, whatever stage you're at, and having a lot of struggles with communication with him. And a lack of communication can lead to a lot of misunderstandings, a lot of mistakes being made, can lead to tension, you name it. It can definitely take the relationship in the wrong direction, or it can stop a potential relationship from becoming something special and amazing. And so, though communication is something that everyone should be embracing, the reality is that we have to be mindful of the healthy and effective ways to go about it in order to nurture it or to create that kind of environment in our relationship. And the reality is that men and women have some differences in the way that they tend to communicate, what is most effective in getting them to understand certain things, right? And we have to be mindful of that if we want to make progress in any situation. So I want to lay out for you some effective, amazing tips on how to communicate with a man. And to be honest with you, these tips can work with anybody, right? But we're going to focus on in a man, someone that you're dating or in a marriage or whatever with. So the first tip I want to give you is consider writing letters. So let me break this down. Usually I wait till later in the video to mention the whole letter writing thing, but I felt like I need to mention it from the jump because it's such an important and a great tool to use. What I've come to realize as someone who's coached so many different people, and I've been coaching for over 16 years, is that verbal communication of feelings, concerns, and things of that nature tend to not go too well, okay? And it's not necessarily because the other person is just an unwilling communicator, but it's very easy for people to get distracted. It's very easy for people to get defensive, for people to not get everything out, right? And therefore, even though a part of the issue is addressed, it's not fully addressed. And because of the way a lot of men are in regards to once you have a discussion about things with them, they feel like after we're done talking about this today, that should be it, right? But for that woman, it might be like, no, there's still more to talk about. Like, I haven't gotten everything out. And to him, it's like, yo, let's just move on from this. And so what becomes more effective is doing all this via a letter instead. Because with the letter, it gives you an opportunity to get everything out in one shot, right? So less dragging on of the situation. It allows you to check your tone, which we're going to talk about later in this video. It allows you to make sure no stone is left unturned, right? And what you'll find is that when people are speaking to you, or when you're speaking to someone, people tend to listen to rebuttal. But when they're reading a letter, they read to process and understand, right? It hits them better. It sits with them more. And they can go at their own pace. They can digest the information. And then from there, you guys can have a verbal conversation about it, using the letter as your foundation, so to speak. So for a lot of couples that I've talked to and counseled, this has been very, very beneficial for them. And understand that, again, it's not that every last discussion is going to require a letter, but the more intense, the more detailed the discussion is, the better it is to use that letter, okay? And so, and one thing I can tell you is that, some people will say, well, what if you write the letter and they don't read it? Well, the majority of people, if not everyone, will read the letter, especially if it's your partner, all right? Of course, there's exceptions to every rule, but people tend to almost always read it. Now, if you do have someone who refuses to even read a letter when you're trying to communicate with them, well, then that's just a greater sign that you're probably with someone that you should not be with, all right? That this is not going to work, because there's not much else that can be done if they're not willing to talk, they're not willing to read. What other, avenues can you take? None at that point. So, but don't jump to that conclusion of, well, they won't even read it or this is a waste of time. No, just try it. And it allows that man to, again, grasp what you're trying to convey a lot more effectively and will allow you guys to experience more progress. All right, so now another great, amazing tip on how to communicate with men is that you want to be very specific with a man, all right? So I always use this story. I've done it before, but I'm gonna do it again, all right? I remember one time I was counseling a couple and the wife was saying how, the man doesn't show her any attention, he doesn't spend time with her, he doesn't watch TV with her, none of these things, right? And so I spoke to the husband and I explained to him what her concerns were, what she was saying her concerns were. And he said, okay, cool, I'm gonna take care of that, I'm gonna do that, we'll report back to you in a week. When I spoke to him a week later, I said, well, how did things go? She was like, nothing's changed. He hasn't gotten any better. It's still the same old thing. I talked to him. He's like, what is she talking about? She said, I don't watch TV with her. I watch TV with her. And I was like, is that true? She said, yeah, but he was on this side of the couch and I was on that side of the couch. So essentially, what she was trying to convey was she wanted attention, intimacy, non-sexual intimacy from her husband. She wanted him to show her desire, right? All these things. But because what she said was, he doesn't watch TV with me, okay? And this is what this man heard. He said, okay, I'm gonna fulfill that desire of watching TV with her. Now, I know some of you may say, but that's crazy. Why does she have to tell him to give more attention? I get that. But the point here is men need specifics because you can't leave it up to him to determine what exactly it is you are looking for or need from him. Now, maybe that wasn't the best example. Let's give a different one. Let's say even in the dating phase, you could be dating a man and a woman might say, oh, well, he doesn't call me enough, right? And she feels like they don't communicate often enough. So, okay, she lets him know, hey, I want to hear from you more often. Now, let's say when she tells him this, they're only speaking twice a week, okay? So he hears that, says, okay, cool. They go from twice a week to 4 times a week. But she's still unhappy because even though it's more, it's still not enough because what she really wants is everyday communication. But all he heard was more communication. And to him, he is indeed giving more. Now, again, I know I hear some of y'all saying, but why do you got to tell a man to talk to you every single day? I'm just going to give one example. Sometimes that man not calling you every single day is not because of an unwillingness to do so. It might be him not trying to be too overbearing, too quote unquote thirsty. He may have had experiences in the past where he was calling every day and a woman viewed him as clingy and needy. And so him trying to play it cool, not understanding what you may need and require from him, he's trying to pace himself, so to speak. But if you simply let him know, hey, if we're gonna be doing this, I wanna hear from you daily. You know what I'm saying? If he's willing, he's gonna do it. But you gotta be specific. And I'm giving these very simple examples, and maybe some of you may not agree with those examples, but I hope you understand the point I'm trying to get at. You want to be clear with a man about what you need. And you should not let the idea of, well, I shouldn't have to tell him, stop you, because no, you should have to tell him because you don't know what other experiences that he's had. You don't know, you may not realize that just because you like something doesn't mean it's everybody likes it. Meaning, example, texting. There are some women who will say they're not going to date a man who just continuously wants to text. There are some women who will say they love a texter. That's their preferred method of communication is text. So for that man, he doesn't know which is which. And some of you may say, well, then he should just go ahead and ask. But again, there's a level of truth to that. I'm not going to disagree. It's good for him to, if I'm talking to the men, I'm going to encourage them, hey, find out what she needs. Ask questions. But if you see it's not happening, you should be willing to express it as well. So anyways, the point is being specific, because if you leave it up to this vague request for him to have to interpret for himself, even when he makes improvement, it may not be sufficient enough because he was not clear on exactly what you needed from him. All right, now before we get into the next amazing tip, I just want to give you an opportunity to get your hands on my coaching course, How to Choose a Man. All right. This course is breaking down how to properly vet these guys in a way that you don't waste your time with the wrong one and you're able to recognize and receive the right one. It's going to break down great questions to ask him. It's going to break down how to get in better tune with your intuition, because that can save you so many headaches and so many wasted weeks, days, years, you name it, and unnecessary drama. Either way, it's a very powerful course that's going to get you on the right track. So click the link below or in the comment section and get the course today. You are going to love it. All right, so now moving on to the next tip on how to communicate with a man, and that is be mindful of your energy, okay? Now, I know there's a lot of women sometimes that when they hear me give these tips and this guidance, right, they feel as if, oh, it's too much. You know, these men are too fragile. They need a man up, whatever the case may be, right? They just feel like it's too much responsibility being put on them on how to handle certain situations. And I understand where you're coming from if that's how you feel. But you have to realize that you're either going to focus on pride or progress. You either want to get better results or you're going to dwell on, well, why do I have to do this? At the end of the day, you don't have to do anything. You can choose to handle things however you wish, but understand what comes with that, right? And if you want better results, then I would really want you to embrace everything that I'm breaking down for you. So when we talk about being mindful of your energy, what a lot of people in general, but I'm going to say it, women even more so, may not realize when they're talking to somebody, and again, this can be true whether you're talking to a man, another woman, whoever, is that even though your words may be calm and proper, your energy is still attacking them. Think about you for a second, being in a situation where you're speaking to someone who's coming across all proper and calm, but you can still feel that passive aggressive energy. You can still feel their attitude trying to get under your skin. Like that's what you're reacting to in that moment. And then for them to be like, well, I'm just talking calm, that only pisses you off more. Because it's like, yeah, you're talking calm, but that's not what's happening here. So let's flip it back. That is the case sometimes with you, okay? Where you may be expressing yourself to that man and you're not mindful of how you're coming across energetically, spiritually to him, that then puts him in the defensive. Because here's the thing, I don't care who you are. When you feel like you're being attacked, you're going to go on defense. Plain and simple, all right? That's anybody. So we want to remove that and make sure we're coming in with a more positive, loving energy. Now, that doesn't mean we can't address some difficult conversations or difficult issues. That doesn't mean everything you say will be liked, right? It's not about what you're saying, it's about how you're saying it. And so what's gonna help you with getting your energy in check is making sure that you do take a deep breath, maybe pray before you go speaking to him. Getting yourself into a more, again, positive mindset and not going into the conversation focused on a specific outcome other than addressing and expressing how you feel. Understanding that, yes, expressing it could lead to a favorable outcome. It could lead to a breakup if that's what needs to happen because you guys are just not good for each other, whatever the case may be, but you're going in to resolve and gain clarity and to provide clarity on certain things. And therefore, you don't tie yourself to a very specific outcome that if you don't get, now you're you are in an even worse mood, or that affects you in a very negative way. All right. So be mindful of your energy. Also, let me say this. if you know you're already having a bad day, for example, or someone's already pissed you off, this is probably not the time to go trying to talk about deeper issues, concerns, or feelings with your partner, because your energy is already in a bad place, right? And so don't get me wrong, you can talk to them about what happened. If they're, maybe you need them to console you or allow you to vent, that's different. But what I'm saying is talking to them about things that you're addressing them or taking issue with them on, right? Expressing concerns with them. That's a situation where you want to make sure you cool off first, then you go have the discussion. All right, so let's keep this going. So another amazing tip on how to communicate with a man is make sure you are not assuming and you're not projecting, okay? So one of the big mistakes people make when going into conversations with people or addressing issues with people is that they're coming in with already assumptions and conclusions, making their mind made up, right? And usually their mind is made up on something that's already negative, right? So it's like, okay, if you're asking him, why did he forget to do this thing you asked him to do, but you already made up your mind that he forgot because he doesn't care about you and so on and so forth, it's like you are not even in a position to hear what he has to say or receive his explanation because your mind's already made up. And when you do that, you stifle the ability for you guys to move forward and make progress on the situation. You have to come into those conversations open-minded. You have to be willing to hear them out. It doesn't mean that some of the things that you might be thinking won't turn out to be true, but you don't want to come to a final conclusion, right? You want to at least give the opportunity for explanation to be given and to see if maybe there's something else going on here, right? So do not don't make any assumptions and don't project onto that man. Like, one of the worst things is when someone's trying to talk to you and it's like they're telling you about yourself. They're telling you, well, no, that's not what it is. It's because you're this and this. And it's like, yo, so why'd you even ask me? Like, why you even bother talking to me if you think you got this all figured out and you're just going to put this on me when that's not even the case? Again, you got to be open-minded. You have to understand that what I feel the need to say in this moment is that you have to make sure that you have resolved things from your past, because it's unresolved past issues that lead to projection and assumptions a lot of times, okay? And so if you really want to improve communication with a man in your relationships, in your life in general, healing is going to be a big part of that process, plain and simple. You know, if you watch any of my other videos, you know I'm always nailing down the healing. Gotta heal, you gotta heal, because it's real. And some of you may say, well, I know people who've gotten into relationships and they haven't healed. Listen, those people either are or will pay a price. I'm not going to say that no one's ever been able to get past that or be okay regardless, because there's exceptions to every rule. But for the vast majority of people, that lack of healing is going to come back to bite them. So don't be fooled and think, oh, well, other people are okay and they didn't have to heal. No, they're not. They're not. And it's going to show itself at some point. And for many of them, the person that they're with is not the right person because they weren't healed to begin with. And that lack of healing causes people to choose the wrong person to be with. But we're not going to go completely down that rabbit hole. That's a whole different discussion. The point here is you got to catch yourself when you're assuming and projecting. And again, I want to mention, this is why praying before having these conversations and communicating with somebody is so good. Like, even for me, before I do these videos, I pray. Before I go on stage and speak, I pray. I always want to make sure I'm getting in alignment with what God wants me to say, right? Rather than just going off how I feel or what I think or what the case may be. And so when you do that, right, you allow God to guide you in all your conversations. You increase your ability to have successful conversations and make progress in conversations and learn or see what you need to see in these conversations. So consider taking that step, but just make sure you are not assuming and projecting. All right, so we got a couple more to go. Another amazing tip on how to communicate with a man is timing matters. Okay? So I kind of alluded to it earlier when I said, or when I gave the example of, if you know you're already having a bad day, that's not the right time to go speak to the man about issues or concerns, right? You want to make sure you calm down first. Well, it's not just that, it goes beyond that. One of the things that I see happen with a lot of couples is a lack of awareness. And sometimes that lack of awareness is due to what I call being emotionally selfish. Like sometimes people are just so caught up in their own feelings about things, they become blind to what's going on with the other person. Now, again, I think everybody is susceptible to having an emotionally selfish moment, right? Sometimes we're hit by things that were so heavy and so difficult that, yeah, we lose sight of anything else going around. We're our own little world is crumbling and we want to lean on somebody, we want to lean on our partner, and I understand that. And I think a loving partner understands that. However, when it's a constant thing, that's a problem. When you're always putting your feelings above theirs, that's a problem. So you've got to be willing to be aware enough to understand that right now may not be a good time. Meaning, all right, is he in a good place? Is he free to talk? You know, and I know that might be difficult to sometimes navigate because, like, well, then if he's never in a good mood, when can we ever talk about things? Well, here's my solution to that. If you look at any couple, even when they're struggling, they're gonna have moments where they're in a good mood or they're enjoying each other or whatever the case may be. And to me, and I know this is tricky because it's like I was gonna say around that time, either at like towards the end of that good moment or maybe in the beginning, that may be the time to have the discussion. Now, some people might say, well, then you're gonna ruin the good moment, right? But again, if this is the only moments that are good and they come few and far in between, well, that's what we got to do. Now, I would say this: if there's that many little good moments to even squeeze in an important discussion, well, there might be bigger problems here. Like, why is there that little of good moments? There should be much more than that where we can find time to talk. The other way to do it, which I would argue is even the more effective way to do it, is scheduling it in advance. All right. Like, to me, adding structure is one of the great ways to really get things on track in any relationship. And so you could do something like what I call the relationship checkup, where maybe, all right, we agree every 30 days or every week or every 2 weeks, whatever your time frame is, that we're going to set time aside and we do it in advance so that way we can plan around that time rather than try to last minute say, well, can you be free right now? They might have stuff going on. But if we know in advance, all right, it's Saturday at 1 o'clock. I'm just giving an example that we sit down for an hour and we talk about everything. We make time to talk about everything. Now that allows us to always have that space where we can come together and address things without things lingering on too long. And you want to make sure that if you are in a relationship where things tend to happen weekly, where there's weekly conflicts, well, then you're probably going to need weekly talks, at least until things get smoother. Because the last thing you want is to have a talk every 30 days, but you guys are arguing every week. And now what happens is by the time you get to your relationship checkup, there may be too much to have to address at once. So it's like it'll be easier if weekly we did it so that we can keep pace with everything else that's going on. And then as things start to get more and more resolved or we get more in harmony with each other, now we can spread out the talks a little bit more because we're pretty much good and we don't have any issues that we have to continuously address. All right. So either way, create that structure and that will definitely help with the communication. All right. So another great, amazing tip on how to communicate with a man is make sure you remain respectful. Okay. You know, they say one of the biggest things that men need is respect from their woman, right? And if there's anything that could derail a conversation, that can derail a relationship, is a sign of disrespect. And so sometimes there are women, it may not be you, some of you may have witnessed it, that when expressing themselves or addressing their partner can have a very sharp tongue, and a sharp tongue that crosses the line into disrespect, speaking down on the man, insulting him, calling him out his name, you name it. It happens, right? Or you have a woman that might embarrass the man by going at him in public in front of others, right? And none of these things are going to be helpful to the communication of the relationship. None of these things are going to be helpful to bringing those two people closer together in a loving and happy way. You want to make sure that you don't cross lines that would make him feel disrespected. And so it's important that there are discussions as early as possible. And if you have never had them with them and you're already in that relationship, well, don't waste time. Have them now and ask, are there things that make you feel disrespected? Because sometimes, unfortunately, you could do or say something that triggers him in that way, and he doesn't let you know that's the problem. But you may see a shift in his energy. You may see that he shuts down more with you. And you may say, well, if he's going to feel that kind of way and now start to engage in these unhealthy behaviors, then why even stay here? Unfortunately, there's tons of men, more than you guys may imagine, who are in relationships, marriages even, where they are constantly disrespected, constantly unhappy, constantly miserable, and they're not going to leave their wife. Or they're not, at least currently, they're not trying to leave her. All right? There's a lot of different reasons why the man does not go, even when that's the problem. But what I can tell you is, even if he stays, the quality of the relationship is trash. It's not where it needs to be at all. And even if he doesn't leave, she may eventually leave, right? One way or another, the whole thing goes downhill. So we want to make sure that doesn't become a problem with you. And so you want to find out as early as possible, I'm just repeating it again, you want to find out as early as possible what are considered disrespectful things to that man, because every man is different, all right? So for some guys, saying certain words might be deal breaker. For other guys, they don't really care. That's not a big deal to them. You want to understand your partner so that you guys can make sure you have harmony in that area. All right, and now last but not least, another amazing tip on how to communicate with a man is let him talk too, okay? Now I laugh because it kind of goes with the whole sometimes being emotionally selfish and unaware, where sometimes a woman, and of course this can happen both ways, but sometimes a woman in her being so focused on expressing her concerns and feelings doesn't realize that she completely neglects, dismisses his, that she's not even allowing him to get a word in, that anything that he says, she's giving him pushback rather than listening, trying to understand, accepting any accountability on her end. And when you engage in that kind of behavior as a woman, you are not going to improve the way that you're able to, the way that you two communicate, okay? And again, for a lot of men, this is why some men feel like there's no point in expressing myself, because she doesn't listen anyway. She doesn't hear me out, and she dismisses me regardless, so why am I going to open my mouth, all right? So you want to make sure you create space for him, but not just create space for him to talk, but you got to be open to what he's saying. You can't only look at things through your lens. You can't just be in your shoes. You got to put yourself in his shoes too. Because the more that you show that you are willing to understand and embrace how he feels as well, the more that he can do that with you, the more that he's willing to have these conversations, the better it is for the overall relationship. So if you struggle with that, right, then a good thing to do, because sometimes in the moment of discussion, you feel so passionately, or you're so deep into how you're feeling at that time, that again, you fall into that trap of lacking that emotional awareness and not even realizing you have not given them an opportunity to speak. So you can establish with your partner early on that, hey, whenever we have discussions, if you feel like I'm not letting you express yourself, let me know. Or maybe there's a way you guys can go about tackling that issue, but discussing that potential problem in advance so that he understands that you are willing, but that sometimes, yeah, you might get caught up in just what you want to talk about or how you want to express yourself in that moment. But as long as he then follows the protocol on how we address that, you're willing to, okay, take a step back. He just made me aware that I'm not listening to him. Let me hear him out. And now you guys can make some amazing, amazing progress. Thank you for watching this video. I pray it was helpful to you. Be sure to watch this one over here on Before Your First Date. These are 7 things you should not do with that man. Right? And I get it and I understand. But I want you to know that you got to start looking at it differently. Because yes, there are things to be mindful